Okay, I think we should make a start. My name is Michael Stone Richards. I'm the Dean of Programs and Partnerships here at Cranbrook Academy and head of the Program in Critical Studies. And I'm really delighted to have our guest, Professor Folayemi Wilson. And thank you very, very much for turning out this evening for what is our final talk. One or two aspects of acknowledgement that I would like to begin with before we introduce Professor Wilson. I'd like to welcome you also on behalf of Chris Whitty, the new, still, one can say, newly appointed interim director, the Maxine and Stuart Frankel interim director of the Academy. My colleague Lynn Tomaszewski, who is Dean of Academic Affairs and with whom this series this past year has been curated. But I'm also delighted, I would like to begin by acknowledging that this year's Visiting Speaker Series was made possible, this is our final guest in the series, was made possible by the continuing generosity of the Gilbert Family Foundation. Thanks to the Gilbert Family Foundation, we were able to bring to our Cranbrook and wider community such artists as Cherise Weston, Leonard Surajaya, from Chicago, Berlin architect, experimental collective led by Axel Tim, the collective called Ram Labor, Space Work. Not too long ago, Fong Bui, the editor and founder of Brooklyn Rail. Our last visitor was Mike Cloud, the painter from Northwestern University. Portia Moore, the museum scholar and activist and director of the Center for Arts, Migration, and Entrepreneurship. And head of the Critical Museum Studies at the University of Florida, furniture designer Jomo Tariku, and now Folayemi Wilson. I think this has been a very compelling series, and I'm delighted to be able to conclude this series with Professor Wilson. I'd also like to say again very clearly that this series was co-curated with Lynn Tomaszewski, Dean of Academic Affairs. It gives me great pleasure to introduce tonight Speaker Folayemi Wilson. I was reading, in fact, it was a couple of years ago, I was reading an anthology called The Black Experience in Design. In 2022, a number of key books and exhibitions on blackness and design work started to appear. The Black Experience in Design, Assembling a Black Counterculture, and a really important exhibition at the Museum of Modern Art in New York on black architects and architecture. And one piece in the Black Experience in Design stuck out to me, and it was a piece called Dark Matter, Celestial Objects as Messengers of Love in These Troubled Times. There was something, on the one hand, a little bit 18th century about the long title, and also Afrofuturist, Dark Matter, Celestial Objects as Messengers of Love in These Troubled Times. And it just so happened that a colleague and friend of mine, Chris Dingwall, who had curated an exhibition in Chicago at the Chicago Cultural Center on Afri Cobra, was visiting and knew the author of this work, Dark Matter, Celestial Objects as Messengers of Love in These Troubled Times, Folayemi Wilson, and we talked about her. I just, in June, July, thereabouts of 23, received the appointment at Cranbrook, and we started talking about the possibility of inviting Folayemi Wilson to join us. I've since then learned a lot more about her practice and the role of Afrofuturism, a form of ontology and technology within her practice. Folayemi Wilson is let me give the basic facts, is Professor of Art and Associate Dean for Access and Equity in the College of Arts and Architecture at Penn State University. She is an MFA from RISD. Cranbrook is becoming an outpost of RISD, I think. Our new director is a RISD alum, and of course, everybody knows, I always say my wife started at RISD before she came to Cranbrook. So she's an MFA from RISD in furniture design, with a concentration in art history, theory, and criticism. And as we were driving around this afternoon, she was telling me that she did 36 credits in art history, theory, and criticism, and RISD should have given her an MA. I think we can probably create an MA for her. She is a book designer, a sculptor, installation artist. Just look at the list up there. She's artist, maker, educator, writer, curator. She's had many major awards from the NEA, from the Graham Foundation in Chicago, very, very important foundation in architecture and architecture adjacent issues. And amongst the major exhibitions, the Commons Table from 2020 at the Museum of Contemporary Art in Chicago, and Dark Matter, the article I mentioned from the Black Experience in Design, was actually a kind of shorter version, I realized later, of an earlier exhibition, also called Dark Matter, Objects of Love for These Troubled Times. Here, my point is not to talk so much about Afrofuturism, because Folayemi Wilson is going to do that for us, but to say something about what it is that Afrofuturism has made available. In her own bio, Folayemi Wilson speaks of the way in which, as a young, nerdy person, she discovered Alice Coltrane, the wife of John Coltrane, through an LP journey to Sat Chidananda. Chidananda was a Swami whom Alice Coltrane followed. And I think one way of putting this is that Sun Ra, Alice Coltrane, the late work of Coltrane, was the opening up of a black counterculture, and therefore something that had not yet reached into a mainstream, not a black mainstream, and not a white mainstream either. And this counterculture had an extraordinary relationship between music and spirituality. And in some ways that shouldn't be surprising, because I think that one might go so far as to say that of all of the arts, music is the art form in which black culture has set the standard, okay, in this country. Many people of all persuasions have said the only native music, the only native art music in America has come from within black American culture, jazz preeminently, of course. And it is extraordinary the degree to which, going back to the sorrow songs, or at least what W.D. Du Bois called the sorrow songs, the Negro spirituals, which become the roots of so many aspects, not only of black music, but also of American popular music. But it's extraordinary, I think, the extent to which there's always been this relationship between music and spirituality, non-conventional forms of spirituality. And Afrofuturism has become, I think, the term that we've started to use to capture this idea of a distinctive black counterculture and way of thinking based upon music. Afrofuturism is a way of thinking blackness as technology. Folayemi Wilson, in her own language, describes her project and her practice as, quote, a work that celebrates the black imagination as a technology of resistance and self-determination, using original sculpture, found objects, archival media, sound and video. Her process utilizes training in art history and critical theory, and employing the archive and other research methodologies to mine, to explore history for use as material in her creative endeavors. She says that she pursues not only, and I think this is the core of the idea of Afrofuturism, it's not just particular musicians, particular composers. The core of it, I think, is this idea that she says that she pursues, quote, not only the enduring spiritual and aesthetic legacies of Blackness, but these legacies are also part of the universe's tenable and little understood juju, if you want, its magic, its presence. Please join me in welcoming tonight's guest, Folayemi Wilson.
Thank you so much. You took my notes.
Oh, did I?
You did.
Yes, you're right.
Okay. So you can turn up just a little bit. So thank you very much, Michael, for the invitation to come here. Thank you, Chris. And thank you, all of you at Cranbrook, for welcoming me here. I had a great day talking with some of the students and thinking about Afrofuturism. You know, when you're working from a certain particular vantage point and you're inside of it, you don't necessarily see it from the outside in the same way. So I think about it and I just am it and do it, but you articulated so much about it. That's really nice. So, do y'all know each other, all y'all that are sitting next to each other? Like, if there's someone around you you don't know, I need the space to be warm to give you the best. So can you say hello to whoever is sitting next to you, introduce yourself? I need the space to warm up a little bit. I'd really appreciate that. Great. Thank you. Thank you. And, you know, feel free if I say something that hits right, you want to say amen. Yeah, all right. Please feel free to do all that. I grew up in a Baptist church and am used to call and response. So I'll talk about what you're seeing and hearing in the background when I get to it, but I just want to tell you, I'm the daughter of Milton and Catherine. I'm the sister of Sunny, Patricia, and Yele, and a sister that I did not get the opportunity to know. I'm the mother of Amadayo, the mother-in-law to Patricia, the grandmother to Michaela and Aria, and the dog parent to Cujo, a 75-pound American Staffordshire Terrier, commonly known as a pit bull. I was born breech. When the sun was in Pisces, I have a Scorpio rising and am saved from being all water with my moon just moving out of Cancer to 1 degree of Leo. I have distinct memories of being in the womb and often dream in the future about my friends or truths that folks think they're hiding from me. I'm pretty sensitive. I move between realms like some of the fictional characters I've invented in my creative projects. And I used to be afraid to tell people that my very first friend was a tree. I found solace and friendship under a large pine tree in the childhood yard I grew up in, but I got over telling people this recently when I started research around the psychobiological capacity of trees and nature. So bear with me through this rather longish introduction. I try to practice random acts of kindness every day, and since the chaos, tragedy, and upheaval of our recent political misfortunes, I've added acts of resistance, not so random and very intentional, to my daily practice. I was not keen on shopping at Target to begin with, but that's definitely over. I also canceled Amazon Prime. I no longer get supplies from Uline. After dropping my iPhone accidentally in the toilet, I have a modern phone, but not an iPhone or a smartphone. And when I was looking for a more environmentally friendly car a few years ago, I'm just so relieved I bypassed Tesla and I drive a Prius. I've adjusted where I get my news since I can't count on the New York Times, my favorite paper for so many decades that I actually worked at, and now get my news elsewhere. Although I do keep up with popular media, I've not owned a TV for about 2 decades. And I'm slowly migrating off of Instagram, and you can find me on Blue Sky, Substack, and Photo. This is probably more than you wanted to know about me, but this is some of who I am. I mention these things because I think it matters. Who you are, how you be, and how you engage in the world, the choices you make, my dear students, it matters. Art matters. Design matters. As the late, great James Baldwin said, artists are here to disturb the peace. And it is at these times we currently, as Toni Morrison says, that artists need to get to work. Are you? Are you getting to your work? You matter. All of us matter, and your work matters. So it was so encouraging to see all the protests and acts of resistance last weekend happening all over the world, responding to what is happening at 1600 Pennsylvania Avenue. As a black woman, a black queer woman moving into elderhood, I must admit I'm pretty tired and happy to see so many people stepping up. I started my professional career as a designer and an art director, and I started at a time when many of us were self-taught and got much of my training through self-study and on the job through mentors, both good and bad managers, and other teachers. Although I have, as you will see, moved into the visual arts, someone asked me, design is still very much in my bones and still part of my process. It's really hard to define who I am as in a practice. When someone asks me, well, what do you do? I say sometimes I'm an educator and an artist. I'm an educator or a designer. I'm a designer. I'm just an artist. I'm just a designer. Sometimes I throw in curator, writer. It's like I'm all of those things. But really, if I were to sum it up, I'd have to say I'm a maker. I'm a maker of objects, experiences, exhibitions, hopefully that delight and wonder. And if I say that I'm a maker, I usually have to explain. It's a bit abstract to most people. So because I can, I'm just gonna show you. But first I wanna talk a little bit about the context of my creative spheres of practice. So we have artist, maker, curator, writer, educator, and I say I'm a co-learner because as an educator, I'm always learning from the people that I'm engaging in education with, and I'm a college administrator. I have a very strong spiritual practice, which is connected to my community and my social practice. And in the middle, where all those 3 things combine, is a very spiritually based value system that strives to increase human potential for common good, mine and others that I interact with. And then between the 2 at the top is my love and being a student of history. So in terms of being an educator and a maker, what's in between them that kind of fuels some of that is being is a spiritual value system. So some of the advertising for this talk, I was going to talk about some of my new investigations into textiles, but unfortunately, when I'm going to say the word fire, and I don't want you to be scared, it wasn't bad, but next to my studio where my building is in, the building next to it caught on fire. No fire in my building, no water in my building, but I had to get my stuff out because there was a lot of smoke and soot, so I have not photographed a lot of my new textile work. So I'm sorry that was the advertisement, but I'm not going to be able to show you that. But what I am going to be able to show you is some of my individual creative work, which is architecturally inspired, 2 projects, one of which Michael talked about. My social practice with Black House Studios, which is public art and community-based projects, and an educational initiative that I started at my college. So I'm going to start with the exhibition Dark Matter, and you've been seeing some of the video from that and hearing some of the audio from that. And Dark Matter was inspired by, you know, the Voyager 1 and 2, and you might know that there's a golden record that's connected. How many people do you know what I'm talking about? Oh, great. So you know about the golden record. And so those of you that don't, on Voyager, Carl Sagan's project with a lot of other people, what they did was record natural sounds and greetings in 55 languages. And there's music from Bach to Chuck Berry to messages from Jimmy Carter, Stravinsky, and Mozart is on this record. And they sent it up, and it's still up there with Voyager 1, which was launched, and reached interstellar space in 2012, and Voyager 2 reached interstellar space at 2018. And so the idea was that alien life would check this record out and listen to these greetings and perhaps understand them. In my imagination, I imagined that they did. And they looked down on us and said, whew, these folks are in trouble. We're talking about 2018, first 45, right? So I imagine that they did, and that they sent messengers of love in our troubled times to try to heal us. So I created this exhibition. It uses archival video from NASA that I manipulated from the sun and the moon, and you were watching some of it. If you want to give a curator a heart attack, tell them that you want to paint the white walls of a gallery black. Watch them freak out. And then tell them that you want to put glitter all over it. Watch them freak out a lot more, which is what I asked to do. So the space of the Hyde Park Art Center, when you enter it, it's dark. It's got walls painted like a celestial landscape, painted black. The floor is painted blue like water. There are lava rocks. There's ceramic orbs. There's sound with animals, birds, Nina Simone, all kinds of music that's mixed in. There's the focus of it are sculptural profiles of a shotgun house. That's where the architecture comes in. So let's give you a look. So you enter the space, it's very dark. So in the mezzanine where you see the sun and the moon, that's video and it's moving. So the space is very dynamic. And there's also sound in 3 different parts of this 2,400 square foot space that gives you a different soundscape all the time because we built silence in it. So you're hearing something different a lot of the time. And the center of it are these profiles of a shotgun house. And you might know, if you know your architectural history, shotgun house is West African derivative of West African architectural that came through Haiti and up to Louisiana. So it's very common in New Orleans, and they called it a shotgun house because you can shoot from the door to the back. But it's made to be very, air can flow well, particularly in hot climates. So what I did is just took the profiles of that house and imagined it as a spaceship that came through the ceiling to come with these orbs of love, to bring love in the first troubled times we experienced with 45. And the space was very dark, and there were pillows outside, so you could come in and just hang out and meditate. And the orbs I made them at a residency in Kohler. This is a picture of the Kohler factory. And since we have students in the room, it's nice to show the finished work, but I like to show you how I got there and what the work I did to get there. So I was struggling during my residency at Kohler. Something I was doing was not working. And then I was just walking through the factory, and this is the factory, and the studio that you have as an artist is right on the factory floor. So I'm working there with these, what I call master craftsmen. They might not call themselves that, but they've been working 30, 40 years making sinks and ceramics. It's very hot. These are what they are Kohler sinks. I just one day was walking through the sinks and I was like stuck, and I was like, oh, I can take these sinks and put them together and I could make these wonderful hanging orbs. So I went upstairs and I said, hey, when they come out of the mold, can I have some? And they're like, yeah, just come get what you want. So these are some of them where I put them together to create these different shapes and these orbs. And so the factory is huge. So my work is in line with their normal sinks, getting ready to go in the oven to be baked before I can put glaze on them and then put them again through the 24-hour ovens. So the ones on the right there have glaze on them, and they even helped me. I said, look, I want the glaze to look like the mica on the sidewalk. Well, we don't have anything like that, but let's figure it out. And so they're wonderful in that they love artists to push them to make new things. So that's one of the things we tried. So just to show you how big the factory is, sometimes they ride around in the back, but you could see all the thousands of sinks ready to be glazed in the background. And so this just, to make those profiles, we had to make them in the space. So we did, so I want to tell you though, in trying to get the glitter on, we tried everything. We tried vacuum cleaners, we tried hoses, and in the end, how did we get the glitter? We had wet paint. 3 days. Because otherwise it would just blow away. And we needed it to be in the paint. So just to let you know some secrets, I had to make the profiles within the space because no door could fit it. It could go through. So after we did the glitter and the paint, we made the profiles, painted those, and you can see the installer, just for scale, how big. They're like 16 feet, heavy-ass pieces of sculpture that we interdispersed, and you can see things, how we hung some things in there. And then this is the mezzanine, the video mezzanine, where the sun and the moon were playing. And what's cool, also for scale, and then what's cool, they also, at night, you could see the video and the sun and the moon from the outside too. And I, through the Graham Foundation, was able to commission poet and artist Krista Franklin and Ben Lamar Gay to come in and do a performance. Krista wrote a poem that became part of the catalog, and so I asked them to perform it. We recorded it, and so there's an LP of their performance that is part of the catalog. So her poem, the music, or the performance, so we had a live performance, and we're able to record that as part of the documentation for the project. And thinking about Afrofuturism and just thinking about how blackness occupies space. I mean, there's a literal translation of blackness on the walls, but also I think of love, and I think of good intentions of Black people, and that being something that was healing. People would come and say, whew, I came in the space and man, I could just breathe for a minute. Or this young 9-year-old boy who would come every Sunday with his mom because he would just use it as a way to try to understand the stars, the sky, and the planet. So that was just very rewarding as an artist. So the next project I want to talk about is Eliza's Peculiar Cabinet of Curiosities, which is also somewhat architecturally inspired. It's at the Linden Sculpture Garden in Milwaukee, Wisconsin. It's a permanent um, sculpture, and it is a Wunderkammer of an imagined character called Eliza, who uses her slave cabin as her own museum and cabinet of wonder, and has a collection of things that are very curious to her as a 19th century enslaved woman. So one of my sponsors, the Chiptown Foundation, said, well, if you're going to build a slave cabin, you need to go look at what they really look like. And so I was sent to Charleston, where I had only been once. And you know, if you've been, how many of you have been to Charleston? So you know how that space feels. It's alive. It talks to you, right? And I looked at a lot of the slave cabins that are still there, as well as the fabricator that was helping me to build this also was sent down to look at how they built. So we built that cabin to last 100 or so years. So it looks very much like these traditional cabins, and it's built very much like them. So this is just some of my pictures and research from going down there, and you'll see that some of what you see that is typical in cabins like newspaper that was put up. Some people think it was put up to distract evil spirits from inhabiting the home because they'd be too busy reading what was on the newspapers and be distracted. So this is I collected maybe over 100 objects that I could potentially put in the cabin as representative of Eliza's collection. These are some of the things that were collected. Some of them were made, manipulated, and this is the Linden the kind of large house at the sculpture garden. And this is typical of what many sculpture gardens look like, a lot of mid-century David Smith, Barbara Hepworth, Osamu Noguchi kind of like sculptures. And it's 40 acres. And I often joked with the executive director there. It's like, yeah, 40 acres, I don't need to come in with my mule when we open this show. But you could, go and walk around these grounds. And so we were looking for a place to put it and went way back in the end of the property and found a really nice space that when you see the cabin, it looks really, really different. So just as a matter of process, from my research, I started drawing. I like to draw. I don't use CAD. I like to hand draw because I can see all my mistakes. So those are some of the drawings, and then I made a scale model that could help the fabricator. And so here we're in the fabricator's studio. Just made it. 13 feet high, just made it in terms of my drawing. And we're both working at the same time. He's building, I'm trying to figure out what the inside is gonna look like. I used some of the imagery that I had collected. Now, students, we didn't measure well. So we made the cabin to be modular so that we could take it apart and take it on site. This is the floor. We hadn't measured the floor and the door. Thank God there's a door behind there. So we're getting it out. We called the guys whose studio was there to have them open the door so we could push it through there and finally get it out. But otherwise, we would have had to take the whole thing apart, at least that part apart. So plan ahead as a lesson. So here's the cabin getting ready to be transported on site. And here's some folks helping me. So you remember those newspapers that were in my research. So I decided to use pages from the proclamation, Emancipation Proclamation on the ceiling. So what they're doing is they're helping me wheat paste that ceiling with pages. The Library of Congress had what the actual pages looked like. So I just got those digital versions and printed them out as large as I could, and we pasted them on the ceiling. And the picture that you see of the cabins that's going on one of the walls is from the research that I did and the pictures that I took there. I wanted to bring that inside. Here you see the fabricator kind of, actually what's really happening, the fabricator is kind of arguing with the guys on site about how to put the thing together. But they finally, obviously, got it together. And we have video actually in the cabin, and our consultant that advised us on how to set up a solar panel, because out way back in there, that property, there is no electricity. So how are we going to run some of the things that we have to run? So he's had this contraption to figure out the sun and what time of the year, blah, 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 so where to put the panel. And so here you see us still putting things together. And then you see, so what was kind of cleared out grass, I was like, can we let the prairie grass grow? Let's let it grow and be around the cabin. So I'm just going to show you a little video, drone video of the site and the cabin. And then while this is going, I decided to ask if we could raise some funds to have artists respond. So during the almost 10 years this has been up, there have been Tamika Reed, who's a cellist, wrote a piece for Eliza. We've had a lot of dance come. We've had other musicians come. We've had Reggie Wilson, who is a choreographer, bring his people there. I've had grad students respond to it. We had one artist, Portia Cobb, actually invented another character, Aunt Lizzie, who planted a garden. So there's a garden nearby that we have harvested food and invited a food scholar to actually cook and teach us about diasporic food. So there's kind of this program of call and response that has developed outside of it. And for its 10th anniversary next year, right now, I'm coordinating with a dramaturg, an artist, Ariel Brown, to make an interactive, responsive video that you can put on your cell phone, and you can walk around the grounds and have Eliza Imagine talk to you about whatever she wants to talk to you about. My way of working with other artists is like, here's the cabin, here's everything you want to know about how I imagined her, but you go do what you go do. You go do you. So I don't know how it's going to turn out, but you can see there's the garden over there. And so that's what's happening with that. These are just some stills. So Eliza's kind of way of displaying things under bell jars on a fallen wall, and you can see inside there's imagery, there's what I call Easter eggs, there's things, if you know what you're looking at, they have meaning. There's a bucket of water in the corner, but that bucket is dynamic water of the Mississippi River. It's a video. When you look in, it's actually moving. There's other video, there's a woodpecker that I found in my driveway that was migrating and must have hit something, and I took it to a friend who does that kind of work and stuffed it for me. So there's all kinds of found things in here, her portions. And then in terms of the archive, down in the bottom there's a little iPhone that's running this video of the ring shout, people ring shouting. I don't know if you know how ring shouts evolved. At a certain point, it was illegal for Black people to dance. There was some power seen in us moving our bodies. So at some point, it was illegal for an enslaved person to dance. So we're not going to not move our bodies. So the ring shout came out of that resistance, and there's so much we can talk about what that ring shout is, but I got permission from the archives to show it. So you have to get down and really see it, but it runs on a tiny little iPhone down there. And then if you look up, there's a lot of displacement of water. So originally, I think I could probably figure out how to do it now, but I wanted the floor to be water, like you feel like you were walking on water, but I couldn't figure out how to do it. So I projected it in the ceiling. Probably could figure out how to do that now with the technology that exists. These are just some other pictures of Eliza's desk and some of the things from her collection. And a lot of kids come in and like ask about Princess Leia. And I imagine Eliza to be a traveling shapeshifter. That's how I think of Afrofuturism, from the concept that the African concept of time, past, present, and future kind of collapsed in one thing. So she travels, and she just thought, hey, Princess Leia is a great model of female leadership. So she's there along with the Robert Duncanson painting, a carte de visite of Mary Todd Lincoln, the Civil War dollar. There's a lot of little things you can find. She collects all kinds of animals and specimens. And I was like, where am I going to put her field notes? And so I thought, Uncle Tom's Cabin. That would have been written about that time. So I got a copy and wrote, and I'm like Sonia Clark, who thinks that everybody is African, because we are. So I always give everybody afros. So Harriet Beecher Stowe, she has to have an afro. There's a little figurine of Thomas Jefferson. He's got an afro. So there's drawings and writings, and the best crit I ever had was a symposium that we had. We invited different academics to come in and respond to the cabin, and it was like an uber crit. It was like the best crit I ever had in my life, all these people coming in, and all I did was ask them, pick an object, tell me how you respond to it, and of course, in their brilliance, they said some of the most amazing things. And the Innovative Teachers Institute of the University of Wisconsin in Milwaukee, they come out and many times do lesson plans for K through 12, and they find that using the cabin is a great way to teach younger kids about this history. I'm going to just really quickly go through a couple other things. I don't have that much more. So this is a recent project for the CTAL station in the Near West Side in Chicago. It's called The Promise. This is a brand new station, and it's beautiful. It just opened the week of the Democratic Convention. Right down the street is the United Center. And as I said, I'm a lover of history, and I kind of like hiding it, but you can find out everything. There's a little code that you can find out, but these dots that you see up there, they come from a study that Florence Kelley did in 1892 when she walked the streets of the Near West Side of Chicago, and she was hired by the Hull House. She was working with Hull House and used their volunteers to understand labor practices. At that time, kids were working in factories. So just to make a long story short, Florence Kelley is responsible for contributing to establishing sociology as a discipline in this country. She was from Philadelphia. And her study of different groups in the neighborhood and what their labor practices were and how they were working and how they were living established this discipline. And also, for you graphic designers, her study, she used the symbols to represent different ethnic groups that lived there. So each ethnic group had their own colored dot. And so those dots represent all the different people that lived in the Near West Side, from when it, from Native American times to present day. And a lot of the images that I have used in this come from the Chicago History Museum that I researched when I was researching the area. And also, her work was responsible for establishing laws, child labor laws, so that kids 8 and 9 wouldn't be working in sweatshops. The Reef Build Foundation hired so in Chicago, I've only been in Pennsylvania now for just like 3 years or so, but spent 10 years in Chicago and founded Black House Studios with partner Norman Teague, who also is a furniture designer, and we did a lot of collaborative projects together, very community-based. This is one for the Dorchester Community Garden in cooperation with NeighborSpace. You might know NeighborSpace. What they do is they buy lots in trust for community garden organizations so that no developer can come buy it and take it away. So this is a permanent community garden. So they asked us to help them develop the space, and we did adding fences, furniture, and these kids that you see on the left are from the high school across the street, and they helped us to make the cement stools that are part of the table and where the community can commune. And a lot of what they do with this garden is they grow stuff and they give it away to the community, and the community can come and get things for free. And again, you can see I'm using the motif of the house as a pathway or an entranceway of welcoming people into the space. And then the Commons table that Michael mentioned is another project from Black House Studios working with the MCA in Chicago. And this was a little contentious in that they created this space for art and invited artists. And our thought was, you know, think about it. If you have a friend and they invite you to their place, you're gonna you should invite them. You should go to their place, they should go to your place. Well, the museum kind of acts like we should only come to them. They don't come to our house, right? So we come to their house. So our idea was, look, you're in a community, a very robust community. You need to go to the people sometime. And so we proposed doing 5 dinners, 5 themes around the idea of collections, and that how can what people in communities find important about objects inform a museum's collection in the community that they sit. So we had 5 themes. We invited people. Their themes were commodification of modernism, nature and social justice in 21st century cities, disability and perspectives, radical futures we did with teens, and relationships with collectors and artists. And what we did is we invited groups of people, and then we asked community members to curate the objects. What we did is we took pictures of people and their objects. We brought a kiosk to these dinners in different neighborhoods in Chicago. We brought a photo kiosk, and we took photographs of them and their objects, and they had to write about their objects. And then we assigned a curator from each dinner from the community to curate the objects, because the museum insisted that we have something at the museum to represent the work. Well, it was okay, but at first they no, have the dinners here. No. And we're like, no, we want to have the dinners in the community. We want you to go to them. So we won that battle, but we still had to bring it to the museum, which was great. And so this is an example from Disability and Perspectives. So the curator, who is the one on the top left, picked the objects, and then we displayed them in the common space. And what we did is we made these tables called the pedal table, and we would take them to the site to have conversations. Here you see us at the museum with the tables having a dinner. And then we had these 5 different kinds of openings to talk about the work and the objects and what people felt important about collecting. And this is just an example. One of the people, her contraption that she uses to get around a lot easier because she's somewhat disabled, she talked about how that was important to her. Let's see. and this is just a little video about the project.
Everybody
Can you
collects, whether they even
can
realize
you
not,
turn
whether
that
it's
up?
dishes, whether it's socks.
Objects are imbued with the giver, the taker, the owner.
I think that the vase is adding on to this like lineages of practices by Black women and Black makers.
I was realizing that there was a moment when that world got bigger, the discovery that the world wasn't all me.
Historically, I think about how I'm connected through other cultures.
These objects flesh out a life that you would never know. And many of us find secrets after they die.
I really like that particular piece because it looks like a little sculpture, almost like a little person.
When you collect, you're becoming the author of your own story.
It's a big connection, you know, and as human beings, that's all we want to do is connect.
I think it's like super important to just always have a reflection of yourself. That's what I really want my daughter to remember.
If you see something you really like, something's going to happen in your body. We call it the catch, and it goes like this.
So the last thing I'm going to talk about is an educational initiative at my College of Arts and Architecture at Penn State. And what it is I've conceived of this summer residential interdisciplinary design institute for sophomore high school students. And the vision around it is to imagine design and creative industries as more welcoming and equitable to communities of color, and encourage their education and acknowledgement of our contributions to design and creative histories. And I want to provide, so here's where it came out of. So at my college, we have a somewhat inequitable system of direct admits. So if you want to study architecture, landscape architecture, graphic design, music and theater to some degree, you have to know that that's what you want to study before you come to our university. Let's say you come and you've never been exposed to landscape architecture, but you come and your roommate is studying it, and you're like, dude, that is so much fun. I want to get out in the dirt with you. I want to, do that. You have to apply. You probably have to spend another year and another $60,000 to do it. I feel that's a bit unfair. So my idea is, well, let me introduce design much sooner to high school students, so if I can get them as sophomores to understand this. So I would like to have this summer program, like a 10-day program for high school students to come and explore some of these design disciplines. So phase one is to convene a national think tank to help develop curriculum, which just happened 2 weeks ago. I invited a bunch of designers to our new beautiful museum, Parma Museum, brand new, just opened in July. And by the way, if we're looking for a new director, if anybody has friends that are museum people, we're looking for a new director. So we convened in the museum, and this is our group of people, about 16 of us, not everybody's here, from all over the country, different disciplines, curricular specialists, equity specialists, disciplinary specialists, and boy, was it fun to be able just to think about this idea with them. Phase two is to raise the money for a pilot to pilot the program. And phase three is actually the program itself. So this is us talking. That was Sula Kim, who's from Northwestern, who I asked to come in and be our facilitator. And so all these brilliant, brilliant brains were with us to conceive of things. And this is just some of our messy notes. We mapped out all 10 days. And then also I had this group do some of the projects that we want students to do. I asked them to bring objects to talk about what is design. That would be the first question we would ask students, what is design to you? And also, I think, Aaron, I was talking to you about this. I also asked him, I said, look, I don't want to see a portfolio. I don't want to see a grade point average, because I want the weirdo kids. I want the kids who don't get the A's because they're not going to conform. So what questions can I ask to get those kids? So some of the questions were, what is a question you have that others don't? What do you see that others don't? What kind of music do you listen to? What do you like to do in your free time? What do you notice about your neighborhood? What does design mean to you? Would you describe yourself as a creative person? Why or why not? Something you like or that you like or dislike that you didn't like before, trying to just get at who the kids are outside of the usual system of evaluation that we have in education. So that kind of is me, and thank you for listening.
You mentioned about that extra year for students that have to elect their program. I was just curious, I went to a design school that you had to go through a first year of foundations, and I don't know if you had to choose something, but you could from then go.
Yeah.
And I'm just curious, do you have it set up there?
No, we don't have, I personally love the idea that an undergraduate comes and does a foundation-like program. Like that's when I was at RISD, that's what we did. And it gave students time to experiment and play. And I think they tried to do something like that, and it just, the way my college is set up, it's just too siloed. They almost act independent. Like, there's the Stuckman School, which has graphic design, architecture, landscape architecture. There's the School of Visual Arts, the School of Music. There's the School of Theater. And then there's art history, and they all operate separately. I mean, I'm just trying to, redesigned a foundation first year seminar course. I can't even get them to do that. So it's just they're kind of set in their ways. Yes.
Hi.
And who are you? Can you give me your name?
My name. I go by Cherry.
Cherry. Okay. Hey.
Hi. Welcome to Michigan. I don't know where you come from, but I'm going to ask you a question which was asked to me last night. So it's the same question, and I call it dream question. Which are you two securities as a special person?
Wait. What? Say that again.
Which are you two securities as a special person?
What are my two securities as a special person? Like, what keeps me feeling secure? Am I understanding the question correctly?
Yes.
One, I don't know if you will understand this, but I'm Black. And there's a lot of knowledge, lineage, heritage, history in that foundation. So that's that. And I think because the Kalunga line for me is very porous, my ancestral lineage is very present in my person, and that connection gives me everything that I need to be strong. Does that answer your question? Two, the Blackness, and then my heritage and my ancestry, which is kind of connected, right? You're welcome. Interesting question. Yes, and just tell me who you are too.
Hi, I'm Isabel Weiss. Thank you so much for sharing your practice. I really, really enjoyed just how deep it runs through you, and I enjoyed the presentation very much. So you spoke at the beginning of random acts of kindness and random acts of resistance that you practice in your daily life, and I think more, I work with artists very closely, and I think more artists I think could really think about that, the daily life and the person that you are, just being a human in this universe, and your creative output, and how interconnected that all is. I'm curious, how much impact do you think, how much influence these random acts of kindness, these things that you're doing in your daily life, are really influencing what you do creatively in the studio? Like, are there any moments where you're like, wow, I just got this idea of a project I could do or a new direction I could take, just through really being conscious of how you're interacting with the people around you?
Well, the acts of resistance aren't too random or
Right,
really
right.
intentional
Right.
at this point because of what's going on in the world. And I think that I feel like those acts of resistance are what allows me to continue to do my work and to feel that it's important. And I feel like I have to capture and acknowledge my agency and power. And it's really easy not to feel that. And so anytime I can exercise an act of resistance, I'm claiming my power. And so I have to have that in order to be an artist and a maker. Like, if I didn't feel any agency, I'd be like, why would I get up in the morning, So I feel like my work matters. And I matter. And so when something happens that tries to mess with that, I have to resist, and I have to lift my voice up to counter that reality and to maintain and keep hold of my power. Because a lot of it is just bullshit. Excuse me. I don't mean to offend anybody by using that word, but a lot of it, it's just not real to me. It's just not real to me. A lot of it is a lot of flapping of wings and exercising opportunity to mess with people. And it's like, that's not cool. So I just feel like I have to pull in that power to use it to keep on keeping on. You're welcome.
Hello again. Thank you so much for your lecture.
You're welcome.
I was thinking about how you started the conversation tonight talking about your best friend as a tree, as a child,
Yeah.
and how you and I were talking earlier about queerness of nature.
Yeah.
And I was thinking about how you had this important relationship as a child with this tree, and then you grew into a queer adult. And what do you feel that you learned in that early relationship or kept from that early relationship that stays with you now or helped you become who you became?
What's the last thing you said?
Like, what of that relationship do you think stays with you now or helped you become who you are now?
I think since I had that early experience with my tree friend, that it reinforces my respect for nature. And it's like, I remember going to Santa Fe for the first time, and, I grew up in New York, and spent a lot of time in the city where there's tall buildings and you don't see the sky. And I remember the first time going out there and seeing the vastness of the sky and feeling like, oh, I'm so small connected to the universe. But that's the actual real proportion of our humanity. We're not, I think, living in urban settings, we're next to tall buildings, we think we're the tall buildings. But we're not all that big. We're consequential to the earth, of course, to Mother Earth. But I think just the respect for sentient life, and I didn't talk about it, but one of my new research projects is about trees, and I want to know how trees store memory. And I think of trees as partners in acts of resistance. I mean, they help us breathe, they take the carbon out, they repair themselves like families. And I'm like, well, if trees, if they have fungus, they make these little things, or you can cut them open and know if there was a fire 2,500 years ago in the tree, if it was living that long or whatever. And I'm like, well, what happened when they hung people from trees and lynched them? Did the tree experience anything? Did the tree store that memory in any way? I mean, there are 10,000, 15,000 people would come to watch a man or woman being lynched. I'm like, what did the tree feel? What did the tree experience anything? Now that may be a preposterous question, but I'm reading this stuff where the trees talk to each other when one gets sick. They send nutrients to the sick one. How do they know that? Through the root system. So I'm curious, is it possible? So that's part of my new research around the tree, and just thinking of nature and trees, where our right relationship with nature, they'd be more partners with us, as opposed to, we haven't been very good partners to nature. So I guess it just taught me a lot of respect for it. Other questions? Yes.
First off, thank you for this wonderful lecture.
And who are you?
My name is Liz. It's great to be here, and thank you for opening the space with connection and warmth. That was really special. I have a question about the catch. I loved that in that video that you shared, and like the delight that is evoked from this object and whatever else. So my question for you is, what is just bringing the catch out for you right now? What mediums and histories? You've talked a lot about your ancestors tonight. You clearly walk with them, so thank you for bringing them to the space as well. And yeah, I just really want to hear what's delighting you and what that looks like.
Thank you for that question. I was at a concert. The president of my university sponsors a concert where many of our students play music. And I was looking at them, and they were really good. And I was thinking, what a privilege it is to be an artist or a designer or a maker. What a privilege it is to teach artists. What a privilege it is for all of you students who are here to have the opportunity to study art and to, at this time, have the freedom to explore creative life. And I remember I was sitting next to my dean, and we were just like delighted of how these beautiful kids were just doing this beautiful music, and just to recognize that we are in some difficult times, but at the same time, to recognize that we could still hold on to ourselves, and to see these kids hold on to their training, and then to offer it and to share it to, it's like an alumni event that people come to. It was in Philadelphia, this beautiful church. I just thought, wow, even with everything that's going on, what a privilege it is to be an artist at this time. That really, to do this work is just, I think, what a gift to have the freedom. Like, no one can mess with this and this. You can do some other stuff, but you can't take away my creativity or my love for others. You can't do that. And I think that that's delightful to remember. No, no, it's not. Sorry. But I did donate the exhibition catalog with the LP to the library here, so you can listen to that performance if you like.
Those will be delivered to the library tomorrow.
Yeah. So, Shara.
Good evening. It's good to see you again, my friend. My name is Ashara. I'm an independent curator. I live between Detroit and Oakland, and I had the pleasure of spending some time with you in Lagos, Nigeria, at the end of last year. It seems like it was
Seems
yesterday.
like a long time ago, right?
Right? When was that? I wonder, you didn't speak about this at all, but I'm wondering if you could speak a little bit about Festac. And the influence that it continues to have on your practice, I think the importance right now of us being very conscientious about truth telling as it relates to history and the archives of the archive, period.
Yeah.
And that work, your work of pulling memory and your memory work into the practice and into the praxis and the way in which you continue to tell these stories. Afrofuturists
Sure.
pulls from the past,
Sure.
pulls from the future into the present.
Sure.
Thank you.
So as a teenager, I participated in Festac, which was the second, I'm trying to think what the acronym stands for, and I don't know that I remember, but it's an arts festival. It's a Pan-African arts festival. The first one happened in Senegal. The second one happened in Lagos, Nigeria. And as a teenager in the late 70s, I was a part, I didn't even talk, I mean, I have so many lives. In my teenage years, I was part of the National Black Theater of Harlem, and we traveled and did a lot of research, a lot of places. One was in Osogbo, Nigeria. We went back in '77 to participate in Festac, and this is a world arts festival of the diaspora. And gosh, just about every country had representatives that participated in this, and had delegates that came. And I felt like so Ashara and I traveled to Lagos in October and November of last year, and I got to tell you, I felt like a celebrity or something, because they are just about to celebrate the 50th anniversary of Festac in there. So there was a pavilion and that they built specially for it. This is the kind of thing where, Roberta Flack, Stevie Wonder, a lot of artists, very well-known artists, were part of the American delegation that came there. And so here I am as a young teenager having this experience of being with Black artists from all over the world. Marilyn Nance, who was a photographer, also I think a teenager at the time, photographed this. It has a book out about it, but I think it helped to, like the tree, it kind of helped establish a diasporic worldview in my mind, connect me with other African people from all over the world of African descent, and to try to understand some of the commonalities of that. And for Nigeria, I guess they were very proud of this and is part of their history and part of their legacy. So when I would, so we went to, was it ArtX? No, it was something else. Lagos Art Week, but there was a video, and I'm watching the video, and I see myself in this video, 17, and it's about a lot of different things, and Festac is one of the things, and I'm looking, and I'm like, that's me dancing, and it was just this surreal moment of connecting time or collapsing time, and remembering that I just had that experience in my body and bringing it back. I'm not sure what else I can say about it, unless you want to add something.
I was just thinking about what's happening right now in terms of Black imagination as it relates to archives and museums and cultural spaces, and those kinds of stories being removed and lies being put in place. So to have a cellular, muscular body memory of something that you can bring forth as an educator, as a maker, as an artist. I just wanted you to just speak a little bit about the importance of the archive.
The archive is everything.
In its present day,
And it's interesting because that space we were in where I saw the video was a library that Yinka Shonabari's foundation had put together of the most amazing art criticism catalogs that, like, I want to go and live in that library. Like, I could have stayed there the whole week. So that there are archives being made, and I think I was telling one of the artists this morning that where I see a lot of famous white artists, they have these foundations when they die. What I'm seeing that is so wonderful is a lot of Black artists who are young, making it, are developing residencies like Yinka, like Victor, who had a small residency, and then big residencies like Black Rock by Kendi Wiley. They are wanting to share and offer collaboratives and cooperative and supportive spaces to our community of artists now, because we need it now. They're not waiting till they die. And I think that in itself, they're creating living archives within their residency programs and programs they're doing. So thank you for the question, Ashara. And I think we're good, right? And I'm around for a minute if any other questions, but thank you for bearing with me. Thank you so much.